Professor Puleng Lenkabula, Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa. Prof. Maganu, the Executive Dean, College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences at UNISA. Our inaugurant, Prof. Mbajiorgu, who is a professor in the Department of Agriculture and Animal Health in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. The respondent, Professor Mabelebele, Head of College of Research and Graduate Studies. Members of Professor's family present here, colleagues, friends, and everybody in the university community, good afternoon. I wish to welcome you all here. I wish to actually start off by offering my warmest congratulations to Prof. Mbajiorgu for this academic success. This is the culmination of many, many years of dedication and hard work. But of course, we all know that he didn't walk this journey alone. The support of family and the community has always been there to make sure that the greatest level of achievement is attained. When we look at the scholarship of the inaugurant today, we see that there are so many things that are being unpacked in this lecture. Animal nutrition, hunger viruses, food production, and a special focus on the dietary nutrient needs of the animals. When you look at it all, really, you can see that nutrition and security are very important. We all need to eat healthy, and we all need to stay healthy. Prof, this is promising to be a very, very good lecture. Ladies and gentlemen, I won't steal the thunder from the Dean, Professor Maganu. I would like to ask him to come forward and present the scholar to us. And Prof. Maganu shall be duly followed by the scholar, and after the scholar, there will come the respondent. Ladies and gentlemen, I now request the Executive Dean of the College, Prof. Maganu, to come forward and introduce the scholar. Over to you, Prof. Maganu. Thank you.
Professor Motsa Marikani, Vice Principal Teaching, Learning, Community Engagement and Student Support. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is indeed with absolute pleasure that I introduce to you Professor Christian Mbajiorgu. Professor Mbajiorgu is a professor with a long demonstrable history in animal science and is currently serving in the Department of Agriculture and Animal Health of the University of South Africa. He obtained his doctoral degree in animal production from the University of Limpopo, South Africa. During his long academic career, Professor Mbajiorgu has taught animal nutrition and production both at undergraduate as well as postgraduate levels. Professor Mbajiorgu has published over 72 DHEAD accredited journal articles and has a C2 rating from the National Research Foundation of South Africa. He is a reviewer of 4 national and international journals and also serves as an external examiner for local and international universities. His current research interest is on the contribution of indigenous livestock on the income of rural households, as well as the use of non-conventional feed resources in poultry nutrition. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Christian Mbajiorgu.
The Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Administration, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research, Innovation and Strategic Partnership, Registrar, Librarian, Dean of the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Dean of the Postgraduate School, Deans of other colleges and students, Directors of institutions, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege and honor to be called upon to deliver this inaugural lecture, being the first from the animal science stream of the Department of Agriculture and Animal Health, College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, University of South Africa. This inaugural lecture is an iconic rite of passage, and the duty laid on me today is to reflect on my passage of life, share my ideas with the public, and show appreciation to the university that appointed me to the position of professor. It is a great opportunity to bring the gown into closer interaction with the town. I've been very fortunate to have experienced the life in the gown and also in the town. First, I start with my creator, who benevolently knew me before I was born and had charted my life's course for me and has mercifully allowed me to explore diverse opportunities and interests and accommodated my human traits, to stray and swear into diverse human roots, but graciously piloted me back to the cause he has destined for me. I thank my Creator, for he is God, whose nature is always to have mercy. My journey into animal nutrition was more by divine arrangement than by accident, as my human nature tried to run paths quite different from where I finally found myself, proving that once God has laid out your roots, you are under his element protection and guidance. To God be the glory. For the introduction, for the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens towards the goal, and it will not fail, though it tarries. Wait for it, for it will certainly come. It will not delay. I just want to say quickly that this is a verse taken from the Bible book of Habakkuk 2, verse 3. And this introduction aptly describes my foray into animal science as a field of study and ultimately into animal nutrition. I have a strong rural livestock-based background. As a child, growing up in my hometown of Umweze village in Ihiala local government area of Anambra State, Nigeria, I had a vision to grow, rear, and care for animals. This played a major role in the type of degree I studied at the universities. Thus, I took animal science as the area of my choice. My first degree was in animal science at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, where I obtained a B Agri Honors degree majoring in animal nutrition. Thereafter, I approached Professor Johnson Gambi, an NRF C2 rated researcher, brilliant and a highly respected animal nutritionist at the University of Limpopo in South Africa, for a space in the research team for my graduate studies. He accepted me and asked if I was prepared for an innovative and creative journey into a field of animal nutrition, specifically poultry nutrition. I agreed, and today the rest is history. Thus, under the supervision and co-supervision of Professor David Norris, who is now the Vice Chancellor of University of Botswana, I did an M.Agri degree in animal production at the University of Limpopo, South Africa. I then did research in animal nutrition, specifically poultry nutrition, for my PhD degree at the University of Limpopo, South Africa. For this opportunity, I owe a huge debt of gratitude, which is external to Professor Johnson Gambi and Professor David Norris, for the pioneering and inspiring leadership they gave me in the course of my career build-up. After my PhD degree, I continued doing research in poultry nutrition at the University of South Africa, where I am presently employed as an academic staff. All these research studies have shown my keen interest in animal nutrition, specifically poultry nutrition and food security, essentially indicating my research focus area, which is improving productivity of indigenous and broiler chickens through better nutrition, efficient breeding and production practices. Importantly, based on my research focus area, I have strived to engage in research tailored to meet sustainable and community needs for agricultural development and food safety, especially for the rural poor. As geneticists continue making improvements to the productivity of chickens, so also their nutrient requirements demand increase with improved productivity. Thus, my interest as an animal nutritionist, therefore, is to produce feeds that will match this increased demand for nutrient requirements in order to in order to sustain and enhance optimal productivity of the chickens, and by so doing, help to confront the social ill of hunger as well as liberate people from the pangs of hunger, malnutrition, and poverty in the world. Madam Vice Chancellor, animal nutrition is a branch of science that focuses on the dietary nutrient needs of animals, primarily those in agriculture and fruit production, but also in zoos, aquariums, and wildlife management. As a field of study, it has frontiers with animal breeding, physiology, biochemistry, and anatomy. Today, I will introduce the audience to the nutrition component only. Consequently, the trajectory of my research activity is basically to continue researching on nutrient combinations that match optimal productivity in indigenous and broiler chickens. At the moment, I'm trying to determine the dietary nutrient levels for optimal productivity of indigenous and broiler chickens. At the same time, I'm also trying to produce the chicken carcass that the consumers want. There have been some progress in this area. A. Mbajiorgu, J.W. Ngambi and D. Norris, 2007. A. B. J.W. Ngambi, L. Kinsani, D. Norris, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2008. A. J.W. Ngambi, S. Mahaba, D. Norris, M.S. Malachi, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2008. B. J.W. Ngambi, D. Norris, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2009. A. J.W. Ngambi, P.M. Nakalebe, D. Norris, M.S. Malachi, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2009. B. D.J. Novel, J.W. Ngambi, D. Norris, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2009. C. D. Norris, J.W. Ngambi, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2009. D. I. Mashamaite, J.W. Ngambi, D. Norris, L. Ndlov, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2009. E. D. Norris, L. Verona, J.W. Ngambi, D.P. Visa, C. Mbajiorgu, S.F. Vodawin, 2010. A. I.M.M. Malabena, J.W. Ngambi, D. Norris, C. Mbajiorgu, 2010. B. C. Mbajiorgu, J.W. Ngambi, and D. Norris, 2011. A. C. Mbajiorgu, J.W. Ngambi, D. Norris, and O.J. Alabi, 2011. B. C. Mbajiorgu, J.W. Ngambi, and D. Norris, 2011. C. D. Norris, J.W. Ngambi, and C. Mbajiorgu, 2011. D. C. Mbajiorgu, 2011. E. C. Mbajiorgu, 2011. G. C. Mbajiorgu, 2011. H, etc., etc. More recently, my studies have concentrated on meta-analysis and the use of non-conventional food resources in poultry nutrition. And also some progress has been made in this area. And this includes some of these papers I'm going to cite now. Ogbewu V.O. Okoro, E.F. Mbajiorgu, and C.A. Mbajiorgu, 2018. Gloria B. Mokolopi, Christian A. Mbajiorgu, and James W. Ogutu, 2018. B. I.P. Ogbewu, C.A. Mbajiorgu, and I.C. Okole, 2018. C. I.P. Ogbewu, V.O. Okore, E.F. Mbajiorgu, and C.A. Mbajiorgu, 2018. D. Ogbewu and C.A. Mbajiorgu, 2018. E. I.P. Ogbewu and C.A. Mbajiorgu, 2019. A. Moritege Modisanje Mojanaja, I.P. Ogbewu, J.W. Mbajiorgu, and C.A. Mbajiorgu, 2019. B. Ogbewu I.P. and Mbajiorgu, C.A., 2019. C. Mashishi M.D. Okoro V.M.O. and Mbajiorgu, C.A., 2019. D. Modis Sojan Mojanaja M.M.C. Ogbewu I.P. Mokolopi B.G. Ogutu J.W. Mbajiorgu, C.A., 2019. E. Monye Mabelebele I. Seleladi Christian Mbajiorgu, 2020. A. Ogbewu I.P. Okoro V.M. Mbajiorgu, C.A., 2020. B. B.G. Mokolopi J.W. Ogutu and C. Mbajiorgu 2020C. Ogbewu IP Mbajiorgu CA 2020D. Ifeanyi Principal Ogbewu. Bachelorette Gloria Mokolopi, Christian Anayochukwu Mbajiorgu 2021, etc., etc. The outcome of these studies in realization of food and nutrition security as well as poverty alleviation has been phenomenal. But the benefit is not only about food and nutrition security. Importantly, these research studies, as I have mentioned above, have also resulted in knowledge generation that has very rapidly become the bastion of high-end agricultural and research and innovation achievement on the continent. Thus, to spread my research findings across the globe, I have published in journals in Africa, Asia, Europe, and America. I have targeted high-impact journals with developmental aspects. I have published over 60 papers in many of these publications. My contribution was 80%, mainly formulation of researchable projects, planning and analysis of data, write-up of the paper, etc., etc. My H-index on Google Scholar, which is a measure of the visibility of my research output, stands at an average of 15, with 666 citations for all my output, amounting to 72 articles, and 12 with 456 citations since 2017 to 2022. Furtherance to this, I've also established web pages on the following platform: Web of Science, H-index of 10 with 152 citations, ResearchGate, LinkedIn, and Scopus with also a H-index of 10 and 290 citations. Thus, I am happy to report that through these electronic platforms, I've increased my feasibility for possible potential postgraduate students to access. And through this, I have also contributed to the growth and visibility of research in the Department of Agriculture and Animal Health, specifically, as well as the country at large. Furthermore, I have been very active in supervising MOS and PhD students, and the emphasis here is placed on developing the capacities of Africa and Africans to conduct African-oriented scientific research. Thus, at the moment, I have supervised more than 8 MSc and 7 PhD students to successful completion. All of these are blacks, and the majority are females. These graduates are highly competitive, both nationally and internationally. Some of them occupy highly influential positions in the livestock development sector. For example, Dr. Tulisiwed Weber is a senior lecturer in the Department of Agriculture and Animal Health, University of South Africa. I have also assessed MSc and PhD theses from a number of universities. And this includes the University of Limpopo, University of Fort Air, University of Northwest, etc. This is in addition to having served as an assessor for University of Zimbabwe and University of Ghana for the promotion of academics, staff members to senior positions. This indicates recognition of my expertise in animal nutrition and production. I am a reviewer of several internationally recognized journals, and this includes Animal Feed Science and Technology, Indian Journal of Animal Research, etc., etc. I'm also at the moment mentoring Dr. Mokolopi in research by co-supervising 2 students, 1 master's and 1 PhD with her. In addition to this, I'm also mentoring one of the NGAP associate professors in animal science. Thus, I am happy to report that these mentoring relationships have resulted in the publication of several accredited journal articles between me and the mentees in the past 3 years. Furthermore, I'm a member of the following local and international professional bodies, and these include member of South African Society for Animal Science, member Grassland Society of Southern Africa, member American Society of Animal Science, and importantly, these professional bodies have helped me to create a collaborative network of researchers, both locally and internationally, which has helped to improve my research output tremendously. Through these collaborative and networking activities, I've had the opportunity to host 2 postdoctoral candidates in the college in 2016 and 2018. Now, those were the preambles. I think now I have to start with my lecture. And the title of the lecture is Hunger Virus, Unpacking the Role of Animal Nutrition as Element of Stomach Infrastructures. The General Household Survey conducted by Statistics South Africa in 2015 found that 14.3 million people in the country have inadequate and severely inadequate access to food. This is done by Statistics South Africa SA 2015. This is up from 12.6 million in 2011. The report also found that up to 26.5% of children between 1 and 5 years of age are stunted, and more than 45% of men and women above the age of 35 are either overweight or obese. Therefore, it is no gainsaying or a gimmick that the current food and nutrition society situation in the country is one that calls for drastic measures, not sympathy, to be put in place to save the citizenry from hunger virus, which seems more predominant than the deadly coronavirus rampaging the world. For a South African average citizen, the greatest infrastructure is not the street lights on the busy roads, nor the railways that seems to be the greatest achievement of some political gladiators, or the epileptic power supply that has now become prayer points in churches and mosques, but rather poverty alleviation. That is, provision of essentials to ameliorate the livelihood of the citizenry. And that is what I call stomach infrastructure. We can't deny the fact that an economy with rising level of food and nutrition insecurity is like sitting on a power keg. Hence, there is the need to confront the social ills of hunger as well as liberate people from the pangs of hunger, malnutrition, and poverty affecting the livelihood of the citizenry, if we must find a sustainable solution to the pains and suffering bedeviling our citizenry, especially the low-income marginalized communities who are mostly affected by the economic downturn. And this is presently exacerbated by the present war in Ukraine and Russia. Madam Vice Chancellor, this entails that for food and nutrition security to be effectively achieved, factors that negatively impact on its realization should be addressed. According to paragraph 19 of the Copenhagen Declaration on Social Development and Program of Action of the World Summit for Social Development, Copenhagen Declaration on Social Development, 1995, poverty perpetuates food insecurity in that it has various manifestations, including a lack of income and production resources sufficient to ensure sustainable livelihood. This means social problems such as poverty that often culminate in food insecurity can only be efficiently addressed through the effective implementation of a comprehensive and transformative research strategy within our available resources to achieve the progressive realization of hunger alleviation and food security. Given the above scenario, this imposes an obligation on us as animal nutritionists to undertake innovative research and other measures to ensure that strategies are in place to achieve the realization of food and nutrition security in order to minimize hunger and lack of food for the poor and vulnerable households. Against this background, it is very clear that the immediate issue confronting us as animal scientists is how to end the social ill of hunger virus and save life, especially the life of the children and women. Therefore, the aim of this inaugural lecture is to discuss the role of animal nutrition as an element of food, nutrition, and health security. They include increasing the direct consumption of nutritious animal source foods, helping to generate income, supporting the creation of employment, generating fiscal revenue, and earning foreign exchange, and providing the world with sufficient and reliable supplies of meat, milk, eggs, and dairy products, and of primary commodities used for clothing, bedding, and other household items. And this is as cited by FAO 2018b. In this sense, it is fundamental that the contribution to the fight against poverty in rural areas requires a set of strategies to be developed by animal nutritionists targeting better resilience of the animal production system that prioritizes animal feed availability and affordability, while at the same time meeting the basic animal protein food requirements and demands of the citizenry, since it has become increasingly apparent that the health of the body depends on a healthy and functional gut, and that many of today's common diseases, such as heart failure, stroke, cancer, and diabetes, are related to gut function and the diet. With respect to chickens, animal proteins such as egg are excellent sources of 13 vitamin micronutrients, and these include choline, biotin, riboflavin, vitamin B12, pantothenic acid, vitamin A, folate, vitamin E, vitamin D, calcium, magnesium, sodium, phosphorus, potassium, and zinc. In addition, of being a source of high-quality protein meat. This is cited by Lackmere, Laura et al. 2017. Thus, highlighting the important role that chickens have in covering minimal animal source nutrient needs and providing resilience strategies at the household level. Consequently, for chickens to continue to play these roles, improvement in their genetic potential should be accompanied by a concomitant improvement in the standard of management, with particular attention to their nutrient requirements in order to enhance food sufficiency, better nutrition, and health of the citizenry, as well as economic empowerment of the rural people. So importantly, for chickens to be productive, they need feeds that will give them the necessary nutrients for body function, including growth and meat production, if they must help us to achieve those important aspects I have already mentioned. So thus, improving nutritional management is therefore necessary in achieving optimal performance in terms of diet intake, growth rate, feed conversion ratio, live weight, high meat yield, and low mortality in order to improve their productivity and reduce the danger to the health and food security of the population. So far, in many ways, engaging in transformative-driven research in poultry production as a poultry nutritionist shows my contribution to transform natural endowments into wealth, defeat hunger and poverty, enhance food security, and drive economic empowerment in the rural citizenry. Thus, as a way of bridging this gap, I have conducted several research projects in the past 12 years. The main project involved improving productivity of indigenous and broiler chickens through nutritional manipulation of food-protein-energy ratio balance, the use of feed restriction method as a nutritional tool to improve productivity and reduce carcass fat in broiler chickens, and the use of supplementary dietary vitamin resources, as well as other non-conventional protein feed resources, such as the use of moringa oleifera leaf meal and meta-analysis in poultry nutrition. Thus, my research interest as an agro-researcher and practitioner is to undertake novelty-oriented research, the output of which will contribute to the development of agricultural food and nutrition security, as well as youth employment in South Africa and elsewhere. In fulfillment of the above research goal, therefore, I was privileged to be the recipient of the following awards for my graduate studies: National Research Foundation Grant Holders Masters Bursary 2006, University of Limpopo Master's Degree Tuition Waiver Bursary 2007, National Research Foundation Grant Holders Doctoral Bursary 2007, University of Limpopo Doctoral Degree Tuition Waiver Bursary 2010, and the University of South Africa Innovation Support Fund of 100,000, 2014. Consequently, these awards have enabled me to fulfill my research obligation in my research in each area. So today, Madam Vice Chancellor, I will introduce the audience to the importance of a good nutrition strategy as a performance indicator in chickens, since I cannot, for obvious reasons, bring the animal here. And I hope all of us knows what a chicken is. So the question now is, Why my interest in chicken nutrition? The answer is simple. Chicken, in addition of being a source of high-quality protein, as cited by Lore et al. 2017, also play an important role in covering minimal animal source nutritional needs for the citizenry, as well as providing resilient strategies at the household level, as most of the production originates in backyard systems, thus highlighting the important role chickens play in food, nutrition, and health security. Hence, they enhance their productivity in order to fulfill these roles. It therefore becomes imperative that the nutrient requirements and growth should be properly understood, since, as suggested by Larry 1989, proper nutrition is a key factor in determining performance and productivity of chickens. And this brings me now to the question and to the next point of nutrient requirements and growth in chickens. Now, I delved into more research in this area by investigating nutrient requirements by chickens to maintain their activities, maximize growth and feed utilization of efficiency, improve laying capacity and hatchability, and optimize fat reduction. Chinsare 2004 and Lohakest 1997 defined nutrient requirements as the amount of nutrient needed by animals to maintain their activities, maximize growth and feed utilization efficiency, improve laying capacity and hatchability, and optimize fat accumulation. Nutrients like carbohydrates, lipids, and protein that the chicken utilizes as sources of energy or as parts of its metabolic machinery are essential requirements for growth. Now, when we ask, but then what does growth involve? And then growth involves the position of bones, muscle, and fat, each exhibiting an individual pattern of development. And this is as cited by Caston in 1969. The most rapid growth or weight gains are made when the chick is young, as cited by Mignon, Gratius et al. 2001. Now, as the chicken grows older, the weekly increment of growth increases, become materially less, although nutrient requirements increases. Thus, it is a generally recognized concept that the growth of animals from conception to maturity occurs in a Sigmund response of size over time, usually presented by plotting live weight against growth. If you look at my figure 1, that is a figure, a graph showing the Sigmund shape of growth, as I've indicated above. And this graph, the source was from Heath and Olusanya, 1988. So this Sigmund response indicates that growth is self-accelerating during the early growth phase until the inflection, when it becomes self-inhibiting for the final phase, approaching maturity, as indicated by Siegel, 1993. In practice, however, the middle part of the curve often appears to be linear. Although animal growth is thought to follow a generalized Sigmund response, the actual shape of the curve can be affected by numerous factors, such as nutrition, very, very important, as I have said earlier, environment, health, gender, and genotype. Amongst all these factors, nutrition plays a significant role in growth of animals. And now we can see why nutrition is very, very important animals. So, as suggested by Larry, as I have already said, nutrition is a key factor in determining performance and productivity of birds. So, therefore, there is need to formulate rations that will fulfill all the nutrient requirements, including energy and protein for growth in chickens. Often, energy requirements in poultry are expressed in terms of metabolic energy intake per day, as indicated by Smith, 1990. Poultry usually consume just enough food to meet their energy requirements, since the control of feed intake is believed to be based primarily on the amount of energy in the diet, as cited by Nahashon et al. 2002. 2006. In this regard, increasing the dietary energy concentration leads to a decrease in feed intake and vice versa, as cited by Vetkamp et al. 2005, thus affecting growth. However, as suggested by Smith 1990, this is valid as long as the diet is adequate enough in all other essential nutrients, and that also that nutrient density, accessibility, and palatability do not limit feed intake. On the other hand, dietary requirements for protein are actually requirements for the amino acid contained in the protein, as cited by NRC 1994. Amino acids obtained from dietary proteins are used by chickens to fulfill a diversity of functions such as growth, meat, or egg production. Protein deficiency in a feed reduces growth. Harper and Rogers, 1965, reported that protein deficiency in a feed reduced growth in broiler chickens as a consequence of depressed appetite and thus intake of nutrients. Feeding animals, therefore, below their nutrient requirement, including energy and protein requirement, thus reduces performance and efficiency of nutrient utilization. And this drastically has a detrimental effect on the growth of the animal. So, I delved into more research in this area by investigating the feed intake response patterns in relation to feed energy and protein content using the indigenous vendor chickens as a model due to their poor nutritional base. Indigenous chickens, all of us know, they normally feed on leftovers from the garage and leftovers from the chicken. So I wanted to find out the function of the nutrient base in relation to their growth. So apparently, the phenomena of feed intake response trends to different feed energy and protein levels, especially in indigenous protein nutrition, has not been well researched. Increased interest in this concept is attributed to problems associated with maintaining adequate feed intake in many rural indigenous chicken household farms. Thus, this becomes an important factor limiting productivity in these chickens. In formulating protein diets, the nutrient requirements of broiler chickens have frequently been expressed per unit of dietary metabolic energy and have been used as the standard for all chicken breeds, including these indigenous chickens. This practice is based on the theory that bears will adjust their feed intake according to their metabolism energy requirements. However, based on a re-evaluation of numerous research data, the application of specific nutrients to metabolism energy ratio in broiler chickens as the standard for all chicken breeds becomes questionable. Thus, because of the important implication of this concept, both the energy and protein levels of the diet should be taken into account when formulating diets aimed at achieving optimal feed intake in growing indigenous chickens. Improved nutritional management is therefore necessary to assist in achieving optimal performance for these breeds of chicken, especially when household protein food security and commercialization is of utmost importance. Such approach may help the rural indigenous chicken farmer to improve the productivity of their chickens through meeting their food security needs. As a result, this study was aimed at optimizing feed intake response trends to differing feed and energy protein levels in indigenous chicken through nutritional intervention. So, for this study, 5 experiments were conducted. The 5 experiments were based on 5 different dietary energy levels of 12.2, 13.0, 12.3, 13.4, and 14.0 megajoules metabolism energy per kg dry matter, as determined in the laboratory using the method of near-infrared reflection analysis, NIRA, as described by Vels and Listen, 1992. Each dietary energy level has 5 different levels of protein concentration of 220, 190, 180, 170, and 160 grams per kg dry matter. thus ending up with different dietary energy to protein ratio level. Each experiment commenced with 106-day-old indigenous vendor chickens with an initial life weight of 25 plus minus 2 grams per bed and was carried out for a period of 6 weeks. In each experiment, the chicks were randomly assigned to 5 treatments with 4 replications, each having 8 beds, thus 20 floor pens, measuring 1.5 meters square per pen, were used in total for each experiment. All the live experiments were carried out at the same time. A complete Raman design was used for each experiment. Light was provided 24 hours daily, while feed and water were provided ad libitum throughout the experiment. Data on feed intake, growth rate, feed conversion ratio, life weight, metabolizable energy intake, and nitrogen retention for all the 5 experiments were analyzed by one-way analysis of variance according to SARS 2008. And where there was a significant F-test, that is where the p-value is less than 0.05, the Duncan test for multiple comparison was used to test the significance of difference between treatment means, according to SARS 2008. Thus, the dose-related optimal responses to dietary energy to protein ratio levels were modeled using a quadratic equation. In summary, results from that experiment indicate that optimal feed intake, feed conversion ratio, and apparent metabolizable energy tended to increase with increasing dietary energy to protein ratio level. However, optimal life weight, growth rate, and nitrogen retention tended to decrease with increasing dietary energy to protein ratio levels, respectively. Table 1 is the result of that experiment. So this table 1 indicates the result of responses in feed intake response pattern of indigenous vendor chickens in relation to dietary energy content relative to protein. If you look at the table carefully, you will see by the left, those are the variables we measured, and then the center is the dietary energy level in megajoules metabolizable energy per kg dry matter. One of the variables we took was optimal intake, and then the second one was optimal growth. The third one was optimal feed conversion ratio. The fourth one was optimal life weight at 6 weeks, and the fifth one was optimal nitrogen retention. If you look at it properly, you can see that the energy levels as they move from 12.2 to 13 to 13.2 to 13.4 to 14, they were increasing. If you look at it, they were increasing. Why? The protein level, if you look at the protein level, was decreasing as they moved from 197 to 191 to 181 and 186, 181 and 184. And so that makes it, in terms of the ratio, that the EP ratio, which is the energy to protein ratio, was also increasing from 62 to 68 to 73 to 74 to 76 megajoules metabolizable energy per kg dry matter. So let me take, for instance, the optimal growth. If you look at the optimal growth, why the energy protein ratio was increasing from 62 to 72 megajoules metabolizable energy per kg dry matter, the growth rate, if you watch carefully, was decreasing from 10 grams to 9 to 8.5 to 8.5 to 8 grams. Now, the same thing happens to feed conversion ratio. As the EP ratio was increasing, the optimum feed conversion ratio was also getting poorer. from 3.4 to 3.9 to 4.5 to 5.3 to 5.7. It was getting poorer. Now, we'll go again to another variable of interest here, which is our let's look at another variable of interest, which is the diet crude protein ratio and the life weight. Yes, we go again to another variable of interest, which is our life weight at 6 weeks. If you look at the life weight, because as the EP ratio was increasing and the growth rate was decreasing, if you look at the life weight at 6 weeks of age, the life weight at 6 weeks of age was also decreasing, invariably telling you that the birds were not growing because the EP ratio was decreasing. So, from the result of the table, we have a figure 1, which is here, a response in feed intake of indigenous vendor chicken to dietary protein relative to energy. If you look at the response level, what it was telling us is that as the EP ratio was increasing, instead of these birds eating less of the feed, they were now eating more. And why were they eating more? They were eating more because there was a limiting nutrients. So in this case, if you are increasing the EP ratio, what it means is that the protein in the content of the feed is becoming less and less as the EP ratio increases. So they were eating according to the limiting nutrients, and in this case, which is the protein. And this is quite unlike the broiler chickens that would have otherwise been eating according to the energy level. In other words, they would have stopped eating as the energy level of the feed was increasing, as the EP ratio of the feed was increasing. So in conclusion, based on the result of this study, it was concluded that increasing dietary energy to protein ratio level improved efficiency of protein utilization with deteriorating metabolizable energy utilization. However, with such diets, protein becomes limiting and bears increase their feed intake, attempting thereby to obtain more of the limiting protein regardless of the energy value of the diet. This is contrary to what has been observed in broiler chickens. Broiler chickens decrease their intake with an increase in dietary energy level. This might reflect the differences between indigenous and broiler chickens in terms of their genetic and physiological abilities to regulate feed intake according to dietary energy level. And what I have just explained from the table is given in figure 2. If you look at the figure 2, that is where it gives a clearer picture of what I have explained. This figure 2, the y-axis is the feed intake, the x-axis is the increasing EP ratio. Now, the first arrow up is the response of the indigenous vendor chickens to feed intake in terms of the increasing EP ratio. The second one is the response of rows 3OA broiler chickens feed intake, response pattern to increasing EP ratio. If you see the differences, while the EP ratio is increasing, that is energy protein ratio is increasing, the indigenous chickens increases feed intake. In other words, they were eating according to a limiting nutrients, and in this case, which is the protein. And this is quite understandable because these indigenous chickens, their nutritional base, remember they have not been selected for fast growth, and their nutritional base is basically the backyard feed, which is limiting in protein. So in order to meet up their nutrient requirements, for them to enhance their growth and productivity, they have to eat according to that protein that is limiting. This is quite unlike the broiler chickens that have been selected based on high energy diet. So when the EP ratio in terms of the broiler chickens, when the EP ratio increases, the energy content of the feed increases with the EP ratio. So when the broiler chicken is less of the feed, they get satiety. And once they get satiety, the feed intake does what? Drops. So it decreases and it stops. So this is the difference between the indigenous chickens and the broiler chickens. So what is the implication? When we ask what is the implication of this study? The implication of this study is that the feed intake response pattern observed in indigenous vendor chickens indicates that responses in feed intake patterns to limiting nutrients, in this case protein, is strain dependent. Apparently, genetic limitation due to non-selection may influence the vendor chickens' feeding behavior as it affects their nutritional requirements. Such non-selection results in lighter carcasses and perhaps a reduced ability to fatten when faced with food marginally deficient in protein. This might suggest that when there is a dietary protein deficit, the free amino acid patterns of both muscles and plasma become imbalanced and consequently trigger the appetite regulating system to increase feed intake. This may be the scenario when indigenous vendor chickens receive feeds marginally deficient in protein. Thus, this observation on limitation in feed intake according to the feed energy level in indigenous vendor chickens, in effect, challenges the strongly held historical theory that all chickens who consume diets to meet their energy requirements and thereby achieve their genetic potential for growth, as suggested by many authors over the years, including Nahashan et al. 2006, Vedkamp et al. 2005, Smith et al. 2009, etc. So, this is where my contribution has been very significant in terms of the nutrient requirements of growth. So now, what is the import of this contribution? So this study has assisted in a better understanding of nutrient requirements of indigenous chickens as opposed to the broiler chickens, and has innovatively resulted in documenting information that will assist in the formulation of optimal feed to meet the nutrient requirements of the indigenous chickens based on their genetic limitations for growth. Mind you that from the onset, like I said initially, these chickens has not been selected for fast growth. So they have genetic limitations. Furthermore, furtherance to the above, my research work also concentrated on the use of different feed restriction methods in improving the productivity of indigenous chickens. Feed restriction consists of limiting the level of consumption of feed in time, quantity, quality, or reducing the hours of elimination of feeding, according to Religious et al. 2001. This practice is used for a reduction in carcass fat content and improvement in feed utilization, according to Plavnik and Hotwitz 1985, as well as for a reduction in pathological disorders associated with early rapid growth due to selection and genetic breeding, such as ascites and osteoporosis, according to Aka et al. 1995, Jones 1995, Sanjel et al. 2008, and Smith 2009. Thus, I looked at effect of time of initiation of feeding after hatching and influence of dietary ascorbic acid supplementation on productivity, mortality, and carcass characteristics of roastery broiler chickens in South Africa. Often, the period between final stage of embryonic development and first days of life in the broiler chicken is made up of a complex and sensitive stage of digestive, physiological, and immune system maturation. Feed restriction during this period may significantly affect the bear's growth and livability, according to Dibner et al. 1998. Incidentally, in most South African provinces, farmers receive chickens late, sometimes 2 days or more after hatching, thus subjecting the chickens to delayed initiation of feeding after hatching. Often, the reason for long delivery times is as a result of distance from the hatcheries to the rearing facilities. This leaves the residual yolk sac as the only source of nutrient for the chicks during this period. So, in order not to jeopardize the development of the chick, the best preliminary practice would be to stimulate the initial growth so that the bird can express all its muscular growth potential, digestive and immunizing capacities, as suggested by Fangel et al. 1980. Thus, this first stage of initial stimulation relates to, in particular, the time of initiation of feeding after hatching. So the fate of time of initiation of feeding after hatching in South Africa and elsewhere requires further evaluation. After hatching, the broiler chickens are exposed to environmental, pathological, and nutritional stressors. Supplementation with exogenous nutrients, such as ascorbic acid, provides benefits to growing chickens, according to Padua and Taxton, 1986. So it has been observed that ascorbic acid supplementation enhances productivity, immune response, and survivability under nutritional stress, as suggested by Zuckfield et al. 1996. However, there are other studies indicating no significant beneficial effect of ascorbic acid supplementation in nutritionally stressed chickens. Such studies include Buron et al. 1994. So, because of this contradiction in these studies of the benefits of ascorbic acid supplementation, so there is the need for us and for me to undertake studies in South Africa to ascertain the benefit of ascorbic acid in nutritionally stressed poultry chickens. So the objective of this second study was to determine the effect of time of initiation of feeding after hatching and the influence of dietary ascorbic acid supplementation during realimentation on productivity, mortality, and carcass characteristics of rows 308 broiler chickens. So in this regard, an experiment was conducted to evaluate the effect of time initiation of feeding after hatching and influence of dietary ascorbic acid during realimentation on productivity, carcass characteristics, and mortality of rows 308 broiler chickens. The study was a fractional arrangement in a complete randomized design. 675 unsexed rows 308 broiler chickens with an initial weight of 32 plus minus 2 grams per bird were assigned to 15 treatments in a 3 times of initiation of feeding by 5 ascorbic acid supplementation level factorial arrangement with 3 replications, each having 15 birds each. The experimental diets were isocaloric and isonitrogenous, but with different ascorbic acid supplementation levels. Ascorbic acid supplementation started 3 days after hatching. More than 50% of the birds died between 1 and 3 days of age when initiation of feeding after hatching was above 36 hours. Time of initiation of feeding above 36 hours of hatching resulted in lower live weight between 1 and 3 days of old. However, the birds caught up. They compensated within 10 days of realimentation. This compensatory growth could be explained in terms of increased efficiency of growth. Thereafter, ascorbic acid supplementation during realimentation lowered mortality rate and improved growth rates and life weight, irrespective of time of initiation of feeding after hatching. So this was very, 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 very useful experiment. You can see the benefits of ascorbic acid supplementation. It helped to reduce mortality. Not only reducing mortality, but also improve growth. In nutritionally stressed day old chicks. Now, growth rate and life weight increased incrementally with increasing levels of ascorbic acid supplementation within each time of initiation of feeding after hatching, in comparison with those without ascorbic acid supplementation at 21 days of age, and continued until 42 days of age. So what this research output was telling us is that irrespective of the time is initiation of feeding, ascorbic acid supplementation helps to reduce mortality, improve growth, and assist in catch up within the first 3 weeks of growth of the birds. However, ascorbic acid supplementation had no effect on feed intake of the birds, irrespective of time of initiation of feeding after hatching. It is concluded the time of initiation after hatching above 36 hours is not desirable, mainly because of its effect on mortality. However, the beneficial effect of ascorbic acid supplementation could be exploited in reducing mortality rate and improving growth rates in broiler chickens subjected to delayed initiation of feeding after hatching. So, the contribution to knowledge for this study. The time from hatching to initiation of feeding is a critical period in the development of the broiler chicken. Time of initiation of feeding above 36 hours after hatching resulted in growth reduction. However, the birds caught up within the first 7 days of realimentation. It is concluded the time of initiation of feeding above 36 hours after hatching is not desirable, mainly because of its effect on mortality. On the other hand, ascorbic acid supplementation during realimentation reduce mortality rate and improve growth rates, irrespective of time of initiation of feeding after hatching. Growth rate increased incrementally with increasing levels of ascorbic acid supplementation within each time of initiation of feeding after hatching. So dietary ascorbic acid supplementation also had a significant effect on dressing percentage and breast meat yield at 42 days old. Increasing ascorbic acid supplementation within each time of initiation of feeding after hatching increased dressing percentage and breast meat yield. This study therefore concluded that ascorbic acid supplementation to a broiler chicken diet could be exploited in reducing mortality rate and improving growth rates in broiler chickens subjected to delayed initiation of feeding after hatching. So this brings me to my third research output, which is the effect of different feed restriction regime during the starter stage on productivity and the characteristics of male and female roast broiler chickens. Madam Vice Chancellor, the development of alternative fuels, including bioethanol produced from maize and biodiesel from plant oils, is likely to result in an increased cost of feedstuff for broiler nutrition. Since there is expectation that world cereal availability for livestock, especially poultry, will be highly restricted. Therefore, there is a critical need to increase efforts of reducing feed costs without compromising the final productivity. One possible nutritional strategy for reducing feed costs is to restrict the feed intake of the birds in the early stages of life. Although some studies have determined the effect of early feed restriction on carcass fat content and feed efficiency, like Plavinic and Hope, 1988 and 1991. Leg problems and total mortality, Robinson et al. 1992 and Sal et al. 1996. And metabolic disorders, Aka et al. 1992, in broiler chickens. There's little or limited information concerning the use of early feed restriction as a nutritional approach to reducing the cost of poultry feed. I therefore delved into research in this area with my co-researchers to study the effect of different feed restriction regime during the starter stage on productivity and carcass characteristics of male and female rows 308 broiler chickens. An experiment was conducted to determine the effect of different feed restriction regime during the starter stage from 14 to 21 stage on productivity and carcass characteristics of male and female rows 308 broiler chickens. 3 feeding levels ad libitum intake, 50% ad libitum and 75 ad libitum intake by 2 male and female chicken factorial arrangement in a complete randomized design was used. The study finds out that feed restriction affected weight of chickens at the age of 21 days, and male chickens were heavier than the females at the age. Chickens on 75% early between feeding attained complete compensation in live weight at 42 days of age, while those on 50% early between feeding did not. However, male chickens attained higher live weight than female chickens at 42 days of age. It is suggested that 75% early between restriction feeding during the starter stage from 14 up to 21 days of age may offer some economic advantage over early between feeding regime, mainly by enhancing feed utilization. That is, the first 2 weeks and 3 weeks of production. It may therefore be a useful nutritional strategy to reduce the cost of commercial starter grain-based diet. And then contribution to knowledge. Thus, this study has assisted in a better understanding of the use of early feed restriction as a nutritional approach to reduce cost of poultry feed and has been cited 79 times. Such information will be very beneficial to poultry farmers in rural areas of South Africa and elsewhere. My fourth research in this research area is the effect of sex level and period of feed restriction during the starter stage on poultry, on productivity and carcass characteristics on roast 308 broiler chickens. Madam Vice Chancellor, poultry production can play an important role in poverty alleviation and in the supply of quality protein to rural people. The high demand for chicken meat, low capital input required, early market age, rapid return, over invested capital, and the small space required for poultry production have increased awareness that the chicken farming is a profitable venture in South Africa. However, high fat deposition in broiler chickens does affect the industry, as suggested by Zubair and Listen, 1996. Allowing bears an unlimited supply of food results in consumption in excess of the bear's requirement for maintenance and production. And the excess energy is converted into fat, according to Fontana et al., 1992. So excess fat is one of the main problems faced by the broiler industry these days, since it not only reduces carcass yield and feed efficiency, but also causes reduction of the meat by consumers. And this we have seen in the shop. Broiler chickens, when you go to buy 2 kg meat, in the shop they say it's 2 kg. When you go and cook it, what you have in your pot left is 0.5 grams. 1.5 of it is just fat. So now, and this also causes rejection of the meat by the consumers, thus, and causes difficulties in processing, according to Chambers, 1990. So recent reports on food restriction during the growing period in broiler chickens indicate that restriction feed intake lowers body weight and carcass fat and improves feed efficiency with compensatory growth during refeeding. However, contrary results have also been reported elsewhere. Broiler chickens undergoing compensatory growth also exhibit greater than normal feeding intake relative to body weight and may exhibit some associated digestive adaptabilities, according to Zubair and Listen, 1994b. Thus, the use of this concept to address problems of high carcass fat requires more studies on the nutrition of the broiler chickens during the period of growth compensation. So the main objective of this study was to determine the effect of sex, level and period of food restriction during the starter stage on productivity and carcass characteristics of roast 308 broiler chickens in South Africa. In this regard, a tool, male and female chickens, by 3 feeding levels ad libitum 75 and 50% ad libitum, restriction period of 5, 7, and 9 days factorial arrangement in a complete randomized design was used. The effect of interaction were not included in the results because early analysis included all the interactions so that showed that they were not important. Level and period of food restriction during the starter stage has an effect on live weight of the chickens at 21 days of age. Chickens on 75% early between feeding attain complete live weight compensation, with those on early between feeding at the age of 42 days. However, chickens on 50% early button feeding did not catch up with those on early button feeding. Differences due to the period of free restriction during the starter stage were maintained up to the age of 42 days. Male chickens had higher live weight at 42 days of age. Abdominal fat pad was not affected by level and period of free restriction and sex of chickens at 42 days of age. Then contribution of this study to knowledge. This study has assisted in a better understanding of food restriction method as a nutritional tool during the growing period in broiler chickens to lower body weight and carcass fat, as well as improve food efficiency with compensatory growth during refeeding. This is especially very important as excessive fat is one of the main problems faced by the broiler industry these days, since it not only reduces carcass yield and feed efficiency, but also causes rejection of the meat by consumers due to health concerns. Madam Vice Chancellor, these are some of the studies I have just highlighted here, but just to show the importance of nutrition to the growth of the birds. So, what are my recommendations based on these studies, these few studies? From these few studies, it is recommended that from the findings of our above outlined research outputs, it is necessary to consider that feeding animals below their nutrient requirements, including energy and protein requirements, reduces the performance and efficiency of nutrient utilization. And hence, there is a need, therefore, to formulate rations that will fulfill all the nutrient requirements, including energy and protein for growth. Thus, to achieve this, the use of a broader framework of transformative-driven animal nutrition research that prioritizes animal feed availability and affordability, while at the same time meeting the basic food requirements and demands of the citizenry should be prioritized, since it has become increasingly apparent that the health of the body depends on a healthy and functional gut, and that many of today's common diseases, such as heart failures, stroke, cancer, and diabetes, are related to gut function and the diet. By so doing, we may in the years to come reap more benefits of improved animal productivity, much better than what we have. And if that is combined with hybrid vigor, can accelerate animal protein targets and consumption from our domestic livestock. Acknowledgement. Madam Vice Chancellor, I want to acknowledge those who have helped me from the onset of my journey to these present days. And I want to start by saying that to an academic father and outstanding scholar and my supervisor, Professor Jones Ngambi, who employed me as a postgraduate student, I render my thanks for his leadership, guidance, and tutelage. To Professor Mary Masafu, who recommended me for employment at UNISA, I owe external gratitude. I also acknowledge my elder brothers, Mr. Ernest Mbajiorgu and Professor E.F. Mbajiorgu, for encouraging and supporting my academic development with a keen taste for excellence. To my colleagues in my department and the College of Agriculture and Environmental Science, for the wonderful support I enjoyed from them throughout my career path in this university, I thank you so dearly. To the wonderful children I and my wife have, I thank you for being there for me and your mom all these years. To my wife of unquestionable excellence, I use this opportunity to reaffirm my vows to you and pledge my everlasting allegiance to the love we share. My wife's patience and tolerance of me is worth of another lecture. My darling wife, I will forever cherish you, now and unto God, the Almighty, Father, who was and is and will be. Unto him who has kept me from falling, and unto him I return all my praises and adoration for a wonderful day. The only being before whom I bow and do forever commit my life to, be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and forevermore. Amen. I thank you all.
Professor Motsa, Vice Chancellor Teaching, Learning and Community Engagement, Professor S.R. Mahanu, Executive Dean, College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, Professor Mbajiorgu, colleagues and esteemed guests. It is an honor for me to provide a reflection to the presentation of the inaugural lecture of Professor Mbajiorgu. Professor Mbajiorgu's research seeks to answer the question, how do we feed 10 billion people by 2050 with animal products that are sustainably sourced and environmentally friendly? Thus, providing adequate and nutritious food for such a large population highlights the importance of the animal production system. As a result, animal production in this era faces increasing and persistent challenges to produce more animal protein products. These challenges are worsened in developing countries such as South Africa. His research has demonstrated to be topical and important as it addresses the UN Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Goals 1 and 2, the NDP, and also the Agenda 2063 of the AU. Now, the impact of his research in the field of animal nutrition includes generating detailed nutritional information on alternative feed ingredients, reduction of feed costs, social impact, and also training the next cohort of scientists and researchers. And by default, Prof. Mbajiorgu's research can be termed transformative as local or indigenous animals throughout the world are kept by marginalized, poor communities and farmers who depend solely on them for their livelihoods. Thus, the value of his research can be seen through improving, enhancing, and increasing the productivity of both meat, milk, and eggs of animals to eradicate food insecurities and improve livelihoods. Furthermore, Professor Mbajiorgu's pioneering work on optimum analysis has laid a groundwork in animal nutrition, and this analytic technique is applied widely and used by both students, farmers, and fellow animal nutritionists. And moreover, his recent interest in the use of meta-analysis in animal nutrition shows that the future of animal science in developing countries is in good hands. Colleagues, perhaps with his continued interest and commitment to exploring solutions to challenges of food insecurity in a growing population, we can be a step closer to answering the question, how do we feed 65 million people in South Africa by 2050? Thank you.
Congratulations indeed, Prof. Mbajiorgu. We are very excited as a university to see this inaugural lecture coming to an end and to see just how well you are doing in your research, touching very, very essential issues indeed. I wish to say welcome aboard the community of scholars, Prof. You've made it. Congratulations. And we look forward to many more excellent exercises that come from your research. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Principal and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, I wish to bring this event to a close, but I wish to say that this is not the end of it all, as festivities will continue and more research, I must impress, more research shall be continuing. Thank you very much for attending this lecture. Thank you very much. Good night. Nihambe kahle. Thank you. Siyabonga.